All right, let's try that again, ladies and gentlemen, as we are letting some students in here. Happy Tuesday. Good morning to all of you. Welcome to February. Obviously, today is February 2nd. How quickly the month of January has come and gone. What a great time to check in with your goals. Check out your life goals after you have now 1 month down of 2021. Revisit. Did you accomplish? What did you accomplish? Setting monthly goals, weekly goals, those are short-term goals that all build to the longer term. So think about it here for February 2nd. What is your goal for the month of February? One thing to look at would be what are strategies that you're looking at? We obviously have things that are going to be coming up for us. Our next assessment is next week. In particular, you want to stay on top of things because 5 months from now, school's over. First week of June, and you graduate. And more importantly for us, first week of April, right before spring break, we're done with content. Our last unit assessment will be right before spring break, where after spring break, we'll come in, we'll review, take the AP exam, and then have some financial literacy discussion at the end. So things are moving quickly. Make sure we're staying on top of those. Okay, if you've got questions, please ask. Let's work together during this process here, how fast things are going to move. With that said, last class, I asked you to look about incorporation and 14th Amendment. When we look at Article 3, the controversy really goes to the founding of the country. When you say to yourself, okay, what is this notion of federalism going to be? How are we balancing that notion of federalism? Can I get a volunteer to come in and just remind us, what's the definition of federalism again? Who can remind us what the definition of federalism is again?
Federalism is essentially this stronger central or federal government and less to the states, and the other way around, anti-federalism is more power to the states and less to the overall federal government. So federalism is basically the power, the strongest power of the federal.
Okay, not so much just the power, but how about the sharing of or the relationship between the two? There's a relationship between a central government and local government. For our aspect, it's federal versus state. And then within a state, you have states versus cities and counties and so forth. So different district aspects here and different sharing of power. And so what we see here is we see Unit 1. And again, with my class, remember, every class is building on the last class. This isn't a class where you forget, hey, I studied for a Unit 1 exam and memorized, and then I forgot everything else. That doesn't work that way. Each class, each day is building upon the next so that you have the whole trove of data by the time the College Board exam hits. Plus, you have a better understanding, better working, better retention of knowledge of how the government and the world that you're stepping into works. So we're going to see some verbiage that we've used in first semester continue here. So the big aspect about incorporation is federalism, the balance of. And what we noticed is that the Bill of Rights, which is our civil liberty protection from the government, was only looked at by states as federally protected. and states were denying those Bill of Rights protections at the state level. And of course, it got bad enough to where we fought a civil war. And out of the Civil War comes 3 amendments. First one, abolishing slavery, 13th, 15, giving voting rights to newly freed African Americans. But the 14th Amendment was the key aspect that really started to deal with states' rights. And the 14th Amendment was saying that states shall not make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the U.S. Direct quote here, 1868. So our goal today, describe how incorporation has affected the Bill of Rights. Now I want you to look at my essential question here, because there's 2 parts. Does the 14th Amendment incorporate the protections of the Bill of Rights? Well, reading that quote, we could say yes. But let's look at the second part here. Does it make them enforceable against the state? I want you to go in the chat box. Yes or no, just for the second part. Does the 14th Amendment make it enforceable against the states? Yes or no? Out of 30 students, we have 4, 5 people who typed this morning. I guess it is what it is. Interesting, a lot of people are going with the yes. Second and third period students said no. Can I get a volunteer to come in here? Why do you say yes? It does make them enforceable. Why are you going with the yes? Please raise your hand and hop on in here and share with me. Why do you say yes? Luke, go ahead.
Okay, so I was thinking about it a little bit more, and the reason I said it does make it enforceable is because it's like that's the amendment, that's the thing they have to follow. But when I was looking at it a little bit more, I kind of just thought that like it doesn't really say anything about enforcing it explicitly. It just says that they have to follow that, but it gives no really like punishment or enforcement to back it up. So originally I said yes, but now I'm kind of thinking more no. So I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, this is challenging. Well spoken, Luke. And I'm glad you explained that, because that is the challenge. The key word is enforceable. The whole aspect of Article 3 is enforcement, ladies and gentlemen. You had 11 states break away, have the Civil War, and just because many people died, the views didn't change. The southern states felt that they were then occupied by Reconstruction. And so just because some rogue people in Washington, D.C. said, hey, by the way, here's what we suggest, the enforceable part makes the challenge. And that's the issue. here in the United States. That's the one thing about the Civil War, or about just the founding of the nation, that makes it very difficult. Because of that balance of federalism. That might be the one negative aspect versus, obviously not being in a complete totalitarian regime. And so that's what we're looking at here when we're talking about incorporation. So I wanted to give a couple terms here, and you'll notice some of these terms we saw first semester. We had sedition, we had libel, we had malice, and we noticed that the First Amendment is one of the number one amendments that has been challenged in court because of its vagueness, especially when it comes to enforcement of. Give you an example of vagueness when you talk about obscenity, pornography. If you look through some of those cases, a lot of the First Amendment in the 60s and 70s went to pornography or obscene material, language, which today you guys, whatever. But there was a major difference of culture. To show how vague it was, you got to go look at Miller versus California, or California v. Miller. It was a case on obscenity where the justice ruled, one of them said, I will know what is obscene and pornographic when I see it. Which of course then makes you wonder, how is this judge going to look at all pornography or all obscene material in America? Libel, slander, defamation. There are 3 clauses to due process. Now, some would say just 2. The due process clause and equal protection clause. I like to throw the citizenship in because that was a big part of it. The citizenship clause of the 14th kind of defines citizenship in that state. But the due process and equal protection clause are very key, because that states that a state may not deny due process. A state may not deny equal protection to citizens, period. And as I said last class, it kind of eliminates a lot of other amendments because there shouldn't be discussion on it. What's the marriage debate? There is none. 14th Amendment. Some would argue the same for abortion. 14th Amendment covers that. Even though abortion really you look at is a financial debate. That becomes much different than what you're allowing. I mean, that's the whole marriage issue. The marriage wasn't about denying people. It was insurance. It was about insurance. The beginning of the 14th Amendment takes shape before the 14th Amendment was even created. Before the Civil War began, you had probably the case that set the ball in motion to the Civil War. The Dred Scott v. Sanford case. Can anyone remind me verbally here what the Dred Scott case was? Anyone remember the Dred Scott case? What it was, or what, at least what the precedent, what the ruling was? Rishi?
It ruled that Dred Scott was a slave, and his owner moved him to a non-slave state, and then Dred Scott said that he was free because he was no longer in a slave state, but the Supreme Court ruled that he was still property.
Beautiful. Yeah, think about this. Dred Scott goes to a free state. He sues for his freedom then, saying, hey, there's no such thing as slavery in this state. In a extremely racist ruling, the Supreme Court disagrees. And what becomes known as the famous Dred Scott case. In that ruling, 24 times the word privileges and immunities pop up. Hence why it's no coincidence that in the 14th you see privileges and immunity. A few years after this ruling, John Brown will lead a raid on Harper's Ferry. Some say predicting the coming Civil War, in which of course we then fought. So 1868, you get the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. And the privileges and immunity is used in it. You then get the first challenge of the 14th in what becomes known as the Slaughterhouse case 5 years later. And in a very narrow vote, 5-4, the court brings and interprets what privileges and immunity states. And privileges and immunity means that states must, that courts must enforce individual rights against the states, protecting privileges and immunities that the state must follow. The Slaughterhouse case opens the door for the beginning of incorporation, which of course Gitlow v. New York breaks down Barron v. Baltimore. Now, incorporation has been slow and steady, and not all amendments have been incorporated. That's an ongoing battle. More cases now focus on the due process clause. And the courts, like I said, it's been selective. It wasn't just a blanket pass of it. It's been selective. Due process clause, I'll give you a key case of due process clause, Gideon v. Wainwright. Gideon was a drifter, robs a pool hall of $20, $30 in coins, 6-pack of beer. Gideon gets arrested, goes to the court, and the judge says, "Where's your lawyer?" Gideon says, "I don't have a lawyer. I can't afford a lawyer. And I expect you to give me a lawyer." The judge says, "No, I'm not giving you a lawyer." Gideon said, "Wait, it's in my Bill of Rights. Do a lawyer." The Florida judge says, "That's federal law. This is the state of Florida. We don't have to provide you with a lawyer." Gideon goes through the trial without a lawyer, have no evidence, no process, and so Gideon found guilty. While in the court, while in prison, Gideon creates his whole case to appeal it up to the Supreme Court. And they hear Gideon's case. And in Gideon v. Wainwright, they rule that states must provide lawyers just like is allowed in federal law. Due process cannot be denied at a state level, i.e., knowing your charges, who's charging you, face your accuser, get a lawyer, all those processes, jury, must be allowed in a state as well as a federal law. So it's big here. The most recent example to help you guys out is 2010. Now, this is a case College Board's going to expect you to know. So make sure you star this. In 2010, you get McDonald v. Chicago, which builds upon DC v. Heller. Two areas, Washington, D.C., Chicago, have some of the most stringent gun laws in America. And the irony, they have some of the most violent gun acts. The most crime committed by guns are in these areas that think they're tough on guns, and yet their crime with guns is extreme. You want a historical example of another country? Nazi Germany took away guns from its citizens. How did that turn out? So think about this, because we could talk some about Amendment 2 in Unit 6. If for those of you that are, pro take away gun. McDonald lived in Chicago, and particularly South Side Chicago, very violent. You can look up Chicago stats, especially in the South Side, every weekend, and you're going to see homicide. Washington, D.C. So McDonald buys a firearm within the city limits and is arrested. McDonald then sues and says, look it, you city, you state are failing to protect me. You're failing to do your job. I do not feel safe. I walk out of my house. There's violence, there's death. I am not getting protected. So I have to protect myself. And under the Second Amendment, I have the right to bear arms to protect myself. And McDonald's case went all the Supreme Court, and in a 5-4 ruling using the 14th Amendment, saying that the Second Amendment allows for people to bear arms. And that states may not deny the individual their constitutional protection. Big ruling. So you can see incorporation is still going on, still alive and well. So here are some cases for you, just if you're interested in doing some research on, since the Slaughterhouse case, leading to McDonald, a timeline per se of incorporation. Now, only McDonald v. Chicago is kind of mandated by College Board. They have used Slaughterhouse before, but mainly only as reference. Remember, use oyez.com to find your Cliff Notes on court cases if you're just interested. To know that this is an ongoing process, that states are trying to deny your basic rights given to us by the Constitution. And that is the dance that we have between federal versus state government. And here, the courts stepping in. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, I want to give you the time here to continue working on the Hamilton essay, Federalist 78. Use those prompts to help you create a 5-paragraph essay. Remember, College Board is leaning towards going back to 3 FRQs, 1 essay this year. So this is a chance for us to practice essay writing. Use the prompts to formulate the essay, have a thesis, 5 paragraphs, because that's what you're going to look to in college. For those that have me for cohort tomorrow, I got a meeting going on, so only email me to check in. That'll be our attendance. If not, I will see you guys on Friday unless there's any questions. Have a great day. Talk to me if you got questions. Colette, talk to me.
Hey, Mr. Buren. So I just want to confirm, essentially you take one of the prompts that you listed and then we make an essay out of that. We just choose one of them.
No, you're putting all 4 together in your 5 paragraphs.
Oh.